Everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here, TYT Nation. Jeff and Ron with you today. Yes, the triumphant return of Rob Placone. Everybody give him a hand.
Get back.
Woo!
What's up, Jeff? It's been a while,
man,
buddy.
it's good to see you again, buddy.
Yeah, man. This is nice.
It is
you
nice.
still got to plan that LA trip, man.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm still working on it. It just got delayed. The whole adpocalypse thing was just a disaster, so.
I know. Yeah,
well,
I know.
It's getting rescheduled because I'm definitely going to come out and see you guys.
Cool, man.
So, to all the listeners.
Well, right now I live in a big-ass house with plenty of space. But
nice.
Eventually I'll be living with my girlfriend. We're going to be moving in together within the next few months. So, you know, make sure you wait until that happens. So instead of having a big living room to yourself, you can, like, you know, sleep on a floor or something.
It would be a little awkward. I'm sure she's very sweet, though.
Oh, no, she's great. Yeah, she's great.
third wheel in it. All right. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Got a great show for you guys today. We're going to be hitting back against corporate Democrats for most of the day. We will be touching on Al Franken, and he will not be touching us. Thank goodness. That was terrible. I should not have done that. I denounce and reject myself.
You know, it's so ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, what he did was gross and wrong. And it's just like, with everything that's been going on lately, it's just like,
it's a floodgate.
There's so many. I've seen so many comedians be completely creepy. You know, just like in my life and being around that for, you know, a decade at this point. And it's like, you really try to, you know, make the case like, hey, we're not all like that. You know, like not all comedians are creepy sexual predators. And man, it's really hard to make that case these days. They're making it really hard. The people at the top are making it really hard for the rest of us. Hashtag Bill Cosby, hashtag Louis C.K., hashtag Al Franken now. It's like, you know, you're making it really, really tough.
Yeah, well, it's also really hard to make a case that you're not that way when you're a congressman either. Look at Roy Moore. Yeah. Look at Bill. Bill Clinton isn't a congressman, but look at that. Look at President Trump. I mean, so
yeah, it's really sad. I mean, sad to see people corrupted by power and to, you know, I'm glad that you know, victims are coming forward.
Oh yeah,
I think that's a good thing. And yeah, I mean, it's just so gross what you've been seeing, and it's so, you know, and I mean, you know, as a man, I can only relate, and I think, you know, we're both being, you know, like we're all being kind of exposed to stuff that we, you know, it's not that we didn't know was there, but stuff where you're just like, oh wow, this really does happen, and some powerful people can really abuse their power in a way that a lot of us didn't know about or weren't aware of, and that's really messed up.
It really is. So we're going to be talking about, well, at least I'm going to be talking about that. Ron's going to be with me for at least the first segment, where we're going to be talking about Tim Kaine and superdelegates. Very interesting.
Yeah, let's, yeah.
And then also I'm going to be talking about how Tom Perez is promising this time it's going to be fair. 2020, completely fair. We'll see if that holds up, and I may have a controversial opinion on that. The audience may hate me for it. So I don't know. Then we got payday loans, and of course, new allegations against Roy Moore. So it's a packed show today, and so I don't want to keep Ron longer here than he can be able to be here. So I want to get into the stories. I'll thank the patrons after the break, after Ron leaves. But before you do that, please make sure to like and share the show. That really helps us out, and it helps us get discovered. So it's good for the analytics. All right. So, Ron, you ready for this?
Yes.
So now here comes the surprise, right? So, Ron, you know how the superdelegates were all in 2016 lined up behind Hillary Clinton from the beginning? It was like, what, 700?
I heard about it, yes. I heard.
Yeah, you may have heard something about it if you were following the Democratic primary at all. And look, you also may have heard that they stayed pledged to her, even though some of the states that Bernie Sanders had won, well, he won the states, and they still pledged to Hillary Clinton, when it seems like they should have followed the will of the voters and pledged themselves to Bernie Sanders. Kind of weird, right? Now, superdelegates, if you guys don't know, and I'm sure, like, you're my audience, you're super smart, you probably already know, but they're mostly party officials, insiders, lobbyists. You have a lot of lobbyists. They don't follow the rules of democracy. And that's the whole point of superdelegates, by the way. It's a completely undemocratic process, right? They're supposed to pick the person who they think is going to win an election. Now, they backed Hillary Clinton. How did that work out? Oh, right. Very poorly.
Yeah, she lost to the most beatable candidate in the history of American politics.
But wait, not only is he the most beatable in American politics, it was also somebody that she...
Actually, quick correction.
Yeah, well, true. But not only did she lose to him, she also helped raise him up into that position.
Yes.
And so doing the Pied Piper strategy, which was a horrible strategy for obvious reasons. So again, that turned out very wrong, very, very badly. So following, of course, Hillary Clinton's loss to this clown, this orange buffoon, some people in the DNC might be rethinking this whole, hey, we don't like democracy thing. So let me go to an article in Politico. Now, Tim Kaine wrote a letter to the DNC saying, hey, you know what, we should actually get rid of superdelegates. He said, I have long believed that there should be no superdelegates. Well, that's a surprising position. I guess considering, it's a surprise considering we never knew anything about Tim Kaine to begin with. The guy hardly got off the milk carton long enough for us to know who he was.
There's not much to know, Jeff. He's a blank suit. He can't beat Mike Pence in a debate, and he's pro-life. There you go. I summed it up for you.
Wow, that's...
But
get back on that milk carton, Tim. Well, now he says these positions are given undue influence in the popular nominating contest and make the process less democratic. Absolutely. Politico continues to plead from Kaine, himself a former DNC chairman. I had no idea. Again, I had no idea who was a DNC chairman. That's how
I didn't know he
forgettable he is. Yeah. I forgot he ran with Hillary Clinton. Like, everybody forgot. Like, who is this guy? Oh, right.
I didn't forget just because I was like, this is the worst VP pick ever in the history of probably American politics.
Yeah.
I would argue worse than Sarah Palin. I would argue he was a worse VP pick than Sarah Palin.
I don't know. Is he worse than Lieberman?
Oh, yeah. I'd say so.
Worse than Lieberman?
I'd say so.
Ooh.
Yeah, because, I mean, Lieberman was at least charismatic and well-spoken. I mean, his politics were terrible. So are Tim Kaine's. But Lieberman was at least remotely likable and kind of did his job as a VP nominee. Tim Kaine couldn't even do that. Tim Kaine had, like, one job, win Virginia, which pretty much only happened because of Gary Johnson. And his other job was, you know, be somewhat tolerable. And he couldn't even beat Mike Pence in a debate. He cannot win a debate against a guy that thinks gay people should still receive electric therapy in the year 2017. He cannot beat that guy in a debate.
Yeah, but to be fair, he does speak Spanish.
The fact that Tim Kaine didn't just like... I mean, I don't know how you can't self-reflect and be like, I should be doing something else with my life. I mean, I think Tim Kaine is so many light years beyond pathetic. It's unbelievable. And if he runs in 2020, which, not to jump ahead here, Jeff, but I think that's what this is all about. I think he's gearing up for a 2020 run. And if he runs for 2020, we will get 8 years of Trump guaranteed. We will have 8 years of Trump if Tim Kaine runs. I would be shocked if that guy, you know, people were saying stuff like, Bernie Sanders would be like a McGovern. No, Tim Kaine would be a McGovern, if he runs in 2020. Well, it will be a bloodbath if Tim Kaine is the 2020 nominee.
He actually has to win a primary first. I'll make that prediction
right now.
He's actually got to win a primary first.
Oh, yeah, I know.
To be fair.
Saying, like, no, I understand that.
So, but, okay, you know what? We're talking about, Tim Kaine 2020, right? Okay, well, let's talk about that, right? So this is probably an attempt to try to get some of the Bernie folks on his side. Or do you think that that's a possibility? I mean, he says he supports the DNC Unity Commission. I know somebody on the Unity Commission, and they are doing good work, I think, of trying to push the DNC to go left. I don't know how successful they've been. I can't really.
Well, they're
speak to
still
that.
getting smeared left and right. I mean, look at what they're doing to Nomiki Konst.
Oh, of course. I see it all the time.
But Jed, to answer your question, I think yes, you're right, but I would say it goes beyond just appealing to the Bernie folks. I think the super delegates are massively unpopular, and Tim Kaine knows that, so he's kind of throwing this political football out there to kind of start bracing for that 2020 bid. I think that's what he's doing. I don't think Tim Kaine actually cares about a true democratic process. I don't think Tim Kaine actually really cares about eliminating the superdelegates or not. If anything, he probably wouldn't want to on a personal level. It helped him out. But, yeah, I think this is just totally a political football. And Tim Kaine, I mean, it was really impressive. You know, Hillary Clinton not only managed to find somebody more conservative than her in the Democratic Party, which is really hard to do, but somebody that's somehow less likable than her, which this was totally by design. Her hubris was such that they were like, we have to find somebody somehow less likable and less desirable and more conservative than me. Even in the Democratic Party, that was hard to do, but they managed to do it. They found Tim Kaine, whose likability, I'm pretty sure I saw the poll, it is somewhere in between German cockroaches and a burn on the roof of your mouth. That is where his likability lies, somewhere in between those two. He is about as likable as wet paint, and it showed. And so this is a political football Tim Kaine's throwing because a lot of the establishment really want to see him in that position in 2020, which I would, again, I mean, I'm making the call right now. If Tim Kaine's the 2020 nominee, get ready for 8 years of Trump. There's no freaking way. There's no freaking way. It would be a Republican landslide.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Tim Kaine's the 2020 nominee.
Now, here's the thing. You mentioned something about Hillary Clinton in the hubris. It's like she couldn't have anybody that would overshadow her.
Right.
You know, it was right.
And I'm sorry, I know there's going to be some people in the comments that are going to be like, you guys are still on Hillary, blah, blah, blah. And
I would love nothing more than to never talk about Hillary Clinton ever again.
Exactly. But the reason we bring it up is because it's in context of it shows how the only reason Tim Kaine is in the position he's in is for all the wrong reasons. That's why we bring it up. He was brought in as a VP pick for all the wrong reasons. That's why he was the worst VP pick, I would argue, ever in the history of American politics. I know that's a tough argument to make, and there are a lot of folks that are better with history than I am. I'm not like a history expert. I don't claim to be. But at least within both of our lifetimes, Jeff, he is the worst VP pick in both of our lifetimes. I would argue that with anybody. And he's in this position for all the wrong reasons. So please do not be fooled by his political football. The positive to take away here, and this is the same thing I said when Kamala Harris came out for single-payer health care, but the way she came out about it, she sounded like she was giving a confessional, like she was confessing a crime, saying that she was for Medicare for all. If you recall that video, Jeff, where she was like, I should probably tell my staff I'm doing something naughty, wanting us to want what most of the industrialized world, or pretty much all the industrialized world, already takes for granted. But anyway, these political footballs, the one positive to take away here is we really know that public opinion is on our side. People hate the superdelegates. They think they should have been gone years ago. Mm-hmm. People are recognizing that the irony in all this is that the Republican Party is more, quote, democratic than the Democratic Party. People are realizing that the superdelegates are not set up to protect us from ourselves, which is like the bullshit farce, the bullshit condescending farce that we're sold. But in reality, they're set up to marginalize true movements. And that's not how American politics is supposed to work. So people are finally seeing that. So you have blank suit empties like Tim Kaine throwing a political football. You know,
superdelegates are incredibly unpopular with the voters, but there are still people that are actually out there defending them. And the superdelegates, they're fine. They're fine. Don't make too much change now. We still want to have control over the nominating process. Well, why would you want that kind of control over the nominating process? Oh, right. It's because you want to have somebody that's already pre-selected win an election. Mm-hmm. Like you kind of had with Hillary Clinton, and I say kind of not as a way to minimize it. I'm just being facetious when I say that. There was definitely a selection that was made for Hillary Clinton. Look, Donna Brazile can walk it back all she wants, but it was rigged.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And that's Elizabeth Warren. I gotta. Elizabeth
I went
Warren
off on her before.
is like that person in high school that you think they like you and you like them, and then they don't, and then they do again, and then they don't, and then they do, and then they don't again. And you're like, just quit playing games with my head. Either you're into me or you're not. You know what I mean? Like that's Elizabeth Warren in politics to progressives. Like that's what she is. She's like that person that's leading you on, right? And then like first she comes out for single payer, yay. Then she supports the military budget. Oh, then she says it was rigged. Then she says it wasn't rigged. Then she calls out the banks. Then she does nothing about it. It's like, come on, Elizabeth Warren, make up your mind. And you know what, Elizabeth? If you decided you're a progressive, you know what you would get to do? You would get to be president in 2020. That's what you get to do. I want to like Elizabeth Warren so bad. And I want to know that she's going to be a good leader so bad because I firmly believe she could win. I firmly believe Elizabeth Warren could win. People love her.
And
I want to. I really want to.
She's just I'm not even angry at her for everything that she's done. I've just gotten to the point of where I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. Like, I get it. You got to play the game to a degree. I totally understand that position. I'm not like that much of an idealist. At least I don't think I am. But you could have voted against that budget just to make the statement. You could have stuck by your guns and been like, yes, it was rigged. You could have. I mean, all these things she could have done. Well, and she's just not. And it's like, come on, Elizabeth. We really want to get behind you. Please. We want to get behind you.
On the rigged question, right? I've noticed a little bit of a thing like, what is the definition of rigged, right? Because I feel like there are two different sides using two different definitions. You know?
Yeah, it's like the I did not have sex with that woman of our generation.
It's one of those things.
That's exactly what it like. Well, by rigged, I mean no, it was an unfair process.
It wasn't totally unfair process. Like, I don't know. Maybe they think that we're saying that, oh no, Hillary Clinton herself went down to every single machine and changed vote totals. No, that's not what happened. Nobody believes that. That's a nice little straw man that centrists set up. But we know, and Donna Brazile, even though she walked back the word rigged, she doesn't deny that what she put in the book. She found the cancer, right? And she found that cancer was the Hillary Clinton campaign having so much control over the process and having so much control over the DNC. So tying it back to superdelegates, right? So if it's so easy to go and buy out the DNC, what's to prevent the next campaign from going and doing the same thing and saying, yo, yeah, the reforms that you made, those are nice, but let's just quietly get rid of them.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that, I mean, stuff like that has already happened. I mean, they rolled back the provisions that Obama had put forth on unlimited, taking money from corporations and so forth. He put some guidelines there. They rolled those back. Tom Perez rolled them back right away.
Oh, absolutely.
And then has purged progressive since. I mean, the DNC has demonstrated by volumes that they have no interest in changing, but they're aware that people really want that change regardless. So you have people like a Tim Kaine throwing these political footballs for their own personal gains. And, I don't believe it's any more than that. Is that reason for complete pessimism? No, the optimism is we know that we got the numbers. We know that most people want this, that most people are discouraged by the process. If the Democrats don't completely reform, they're done as a party, which is something we've known for a while now too, Jeff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's definitely things that we need to do, like we need to have like an outside pressure, right, and an inside pressure. Bernie Sanders is going the inside route and trying to change the DNC from the inside. Justice Democrats is doing the same thing. And there's that outside pressure, too, from different political parties, from third parties, and not necessarily the Green Party. Sorry, Greens, but I don't really see you guys doing a whole lot, at least from what I can see. Maybe I'm wrong.
I
but
think it needs to be a full different third party. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the Greens have just kind of too much baggage going along there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just yeah, I don't, and I like a lot of people that are doing work within the Green Party. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you know, to kind of put a bow on all this, we're still all on the same team. You know, whether you're Dem enter or Dem exit, we're still all on the same team. You know, whether you're SA, DSA, Green Party, we're still all on the same team.
Which, by the way,
you know, Bernie Sanders said it himself. He said, you got to do what works for you. Now, we do have to have a kind of cohesive strategy. But right now, man, we really got to try it all and see what works. I don't have very much faith in reforming the Democratic Party. I really don't. I'm migrating more towards the draft Bernie thing. But you know what?
Reform is a bad word. Reform is not the word that I'm talking about, right? I want a complete gutting and takeover. Like
that, exactly.
That's what I want.
I really don't have a ton of confidence in that happening. But you know, that being said, do I try to help as many Justice Democrats as I can by giving them a platform, either with smaller things I'm involved with or the Jimmy Dore show? Absolutely, I do. You know, am I willing to totally go out and cast a vote for Justice Democrats? Abso-freaking-lutely. You know, and whoever is going to try to, you know, out primary Feinstein, I will cast that person a vote. And yeah. So anyway,
so well, on that one more thing on that, right? So I know there's one thing that the centrist Democrats love, like the Clintonites love to throw at us, especially at Bernie Sanders. Oh, you were just using the Democratic Party. You were using their infrastructure. Well, you know what? You goddamn right we're going to use your infrastructure.
Yeah.
And you know what? We're going to use it to make a progressive party that will actually win.
And you know what? You use us by thinking you're entitled to our votes. So when the Democratic is, Bernie was just using the Democratic structure. He was just using the Democratic Party. Well, the Democratic Party is using voters. They're using all of these coalitions of voters and citizens by thinking they're entitled to their vote because they're slightly less repulsive than the Republicans, even though there's really only one party and it's the money party. And even though they've made it clear that business interests come first, they're turning their backs on the people by just thinking they're entitled to their vote. So if anybody's using anybody, the Democratic Party is using people.
Yeah. So, look, what we want to do is we want to actually make a party. I don't care what label you slap on it, but if you're going to have the existing infrastructure of the Democratic Party, then I'd rather use that to do progressive policies and to actually win elections and to do the right thing, to actually represent working people. Because it's clear the Republicans are never going to do that. So the Democratic Party is, unfortunately, right now, in my opinion, the closest thing that we have to a party that we can take over and actually use to do progressive policy. That's incredibly popular, by the way.
Yeah. So, Jeff, before I go, do you mind if I plug a few things?
Go ahead. Plug away.
So I'm going to be doing a lot of touring over the next year, you guys. I'm going to be doing a house tour, actually, where I'm actually performing at people's houses that are bringing me in. Also, I have a Patreon now as well. You can go to patreon.com/romplacone. And I only have one tier. So you can give, the recommended amount is $5. But if that's a little steep, you can give as little as $1 a month. And you're going to get my album delivered to your inbox when it comes out. You're going to get my book delivered to your inbox when that comes out. You get an exclusive podcast every week, exclusive videos every week. And if I'm coming to your town or if you can attend one of my shows, you get free admission to that show. And the first 50 people, and that's why I'm announcing this now because I only have a few spots left. We're at about 47 right now. The first 50 people to sign up at any level, no matter what you sign up at, once I hit my goal, which is 800 patrons, once I hit my goal, you get a free T-shirt in the mail. So first 50 get a free T-shirt once I reach my goal. So if you're able to, and I know that there's a lot of awesome shows out there and a lot of awesome patrons to support. I certainly don't want you to pick between one or the other. But if you're able to throw an extra $1 a month out there and want to get that content and think that's a pretty cool thing to get more involved with the stuff I got going on, please consider it, and I'd be excited to mail you that T-shirt once I hit that goal.
All right, awesome. So
thanks, Jeff.
Yeah. Hey, we'll see you. We'll see you later. We'll see you next week. Actually, you have a good week, dude.
Yes.
Thanks for joining me
I'll
again.
Be back.
It was awesome. So we'll have a good one, man.
Thanks a lot, Jeff.
All right. So once I stop messing up with my controls, I'm going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We got more stories for you guys, so stay right here around the nation. Everybody, welcome back to the show, Around the Nation, right here, TYT Nation. If you haven't already, please give us a like and share. I want to do a couple of patron shout-outs before we get to the rest of the show. I want to thank Farzad Mansouri, Jane Ferry, Frank Tenzer, Kevin Broom, and let's see. I think I may have seen Kevin's name yesterday, but thank you anyway. And Safir Amourpour. So all those names. For all those people, thank you so much for supporting the show. If you want to join us and help keep TYT Nation on the air and growing and progressive media, please go to our Patreon, patreon.com/TYT Nation. All right, let's move on. I'm going to cast some more shade on the DNC. In almost an admission of unfairness in last year's Democratic primary, DNC Chair Tom Perez is vowing to make the Democratic primaries more fair in 2020. According to The Hill, Tom Perez, chairman of the Democratic National Committee, is now pledging to make the party's primary process fairer and more transparent in the wake of a deeply divisive 2016 nominating contest between Clinton and Sanders. Now, in an interview with radio host John Katzimatidis, there's no way I said that right. Perez acknowledged that last year's Democratic primaries left many voters skeptical of the party's intentions and has vowed to make up for that in future contests. He said, "It is clear to me that the DNC has to do a better job of ensuring the democratic process is fair to everybody. And by everybody, I mean not just the candidates, but the voters feel like the party is transparent and the party is giving an opportunity to everyone in the party is making sure that everyone who is able to vote can get out there. I know that we have to do a better job as the Democratic Party in making sure that the process is fair." He sure is talking a lot about fair, right? So, look, see, he wants to make things fair, right? Well, let's talk about some of the things that were not fair. So was it fair when Tom Perez came up with the smear that Bernie Sanders doesn't do well with minorities, that he's only the party of white Bernie bros, right? Now, this happened before the Nevada caucus. I've got the email here from WikiLeaks, right? He said, "Nevada is an opportunity to fight back on so many levels. First, the current storyline is that she does not connect well with young voters," which is true. She did terrible with millennials. "Given that Nevada is far more demographically representative of America, I am confident that HRC can do well with all African Americans, Latinos, and Asian Americans. Emmy and the team have a good plan to attract all minority voters. When we do well there, then the narrative changes from Bernie kicks ass among young voters to Bernie does well only among young white liberals. That is a different story and the perfect lead-in to South Carolina, where once again we can work to attract young voters of color. So I think Nevada is a real opportunity, and I would strongly urge HRC to get out there within a couple of days. So that's what he said about Bernie Sanders. So here he is like, oh, yeah, you know, I'm going to advise the Clinton campaign to basically smear Bernie Sanders as somebody who can only attract white men. Wonderful. Which is not true. In fact, among African Americans, Bernie Sanders is incredibly popular. He's getting an 83% approval rating. Also, about 77% among Latinos. You know the group he actually does worse with? White men. That's his worst demographic group. So, again, this was a complete lie, a complete smear. But a way to try and change the narrative against Bernie Sanders. Now, speaking of, or I should say, continuing with fair, right? Was it fair that he just jumped into the race for DNC chair at the urging of Barack Obama simply because Keith Ellison was actually starting to win? And Keith Ellison was doing very well. He jumped in at the end and unfortunately got the chairmanship. Now, what about the fairness of the primary itself? Which, by him saying that, I want to make sure that it's more fair in 2020, you're actually kind of admitting that it wasn't fair without actually admitting it. Now, on that, he says, the DNC would take to assure voters that the primary process is fair is to set the party's debate schedule before all the candidates have announced their bids, as previously reported by The Hill. Last time around, there was a very strong sense the primary debate schedule was set up in a way as to help one candidate over another, and we're not going to have that happen. No. See, let me disagree with that slightly, right? There's no sense of that. That actually happened. They actually did favor one candidate over the other. Look, they reduced the number of debates, for example, and put them on weird schedules so that very few people would actually be able to watch those debates. That allowed to Republicans, by the way, to set the narrative while hiding Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton before it was too late, by doing so few debates. Well, if the establishment was so proud of Hillary Clinton, then why not trot her out more? Why not let her debate more? Why not let, you know, her centrist ideas that were supposed to be indicative of the nation at large lead the debate? Oh, right, she didn't do that. I mean, why let Republicans, and specifically Donald Trump, get more airtime? Oh, right, it's because that played into her Pied Piper strategy. How'd that work out? Not very well. Not very well. Now, finally, Perez also said that the party's success in future races will depend on its ability to build its own infrastructure. He said that includes its use of technology and organizing efforts. He said last year, the DNC had allowed its basic infrastructure to degrade. Well, a lot of that is thanks to Barack Obama. Barack Obama left the DNC after his election in 2012 in debt. Millions and millions of dollars in debt. So much so that Hillary Clinton had to take over later. I mean, we found out, thanks to Donna Brazile in her book, that the Clinton campaign had the DNC on life support. So Obama leaves the DNC in debt. Here comes the Clinton campaign with money saying, okay, we'll keep you afloat, but we're going to put you on life support if we get control over the DNC before I'm the nominee. I'm going to be the nominee anyway. So let's just do this already. Let me just take over the DNC now instead of later. Because these guys, Bernie Sanders, he's got no chance. He's a socialist. Well, Bernie Sanders did have a chance. And of course, unfortunately, thanks to a lot of the activities of the DNC, well, we'll never know if he had a better chance or if he would have actually won because he didn't get a fair shake. So, now, the control that Hillary Clinton's campaign had was over communication, press releases, schedules, and a lot of the stuff that seemed to be really, really important to a candidate. Now, look, make no mistake, the election, the primary was rigged in favor of Hillary Clinton. Now, some of you might object to that label, right? But the definition of rigged that I'm using is they influenced the outcome of the primary by stacking things in favor of Hillary Clinton. They cleared the field for Hillary Clinton. That is rigged. And that's something that a lot of Democrats have actually admitted, even without using that name. Now, Brazile walked that back by saying, oh, well, the primary wasn't really rigged after all. Elizabeth Warren, same thing. Oh, it wasn't, I take it back, wasn't really rigged. But basically, they still admit that there were biases at play. And for me, that does equal rigged. Now, that doesn't mean that they went and changed vote totals, but they certainly disenfranchised people. There were registrations that were weirdly changed, and there were voters that were purged in places like Brooklyn. So over 200,000 people were disenfranchised. That's weird. And if that's not rigged, I don't know what is. So, all that said, I am actually going to say something somewhat controversial. I'm kind of inclined to believe him. Here's why. The number one reason: no more Hillary Clinton. She's not in the race. She's not going to be in the race. She's not running. Now, for example, Joe Biden might, but he seems to be popular enough among Democrats and the country to not need anyone's help to win a primary. Hillary Clinton was so unpopular. She had such high negative ratings. She had so much baggage that everybody knew going into this that she was going to need help to clear the field. That's why they did it. That's why they did it. So, and they knew how weak and flawed of a candidate she was going to be. And they didn't even expect a real primary challenge in the first place. I mean, this whole primary was a coronation that was going to lead to Hillary and Jeb. That's what we all thought from the beginning. And unfortunately, that's not how it worked out. Both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump upended that paradigm. They were incredibly unexpected. I don't know if Hillary Clinton thought that their whole strategy to elevate Donald Trump was actually going to win or actually going to work, but it actually did work. So I think that Tom Perez is smart enough to realize that they're not going to get away with it a second time. We're watching them. His DNC chairmanship is on the line. If the DNC goes under, like it looks like it's going to, the guy's out of a paycheck. So they can't afford to rig it again because they know people are watching. We're watching. We got their eyes on them. And so I don't think that they're going to try this again. That only works if nobody's paying attention. Then again, I might be completely wrong. I might be completely naive. And you could be, and you're absolutely fair to say, now I disagree with you, Jeff, and here's why. And again, that's fair. We can have a discussion. That's just what I'm thinking, right? And again, I might not be right about this. I mean, look, the DNC has been incredibly resistant to change. But at the same time, I don't see the payoff of, trying to do the same thing again. They literally thought that they were going to win. They're hubris, right? And that all these people that actually helped Hillary Clinton during the campaign to stack it against Bernie Sanders were all going to go on. They were going to beat Trump. They were going to beat Jeb. They were going to beat whoever. And they're going to end up in the White House. I mean, they were literally there measuring the drapes. But guess what? It didn't happen. I don't think that they're dumb enough to try this again. Because we're actually paying attention now. And we're actually holding them accountable. And see, that's what it is. There is tons of corruption inside of the DNC. But you know what? Sunlight happens to be the best disinfectant. So as long as we keep watching them, and as long as we don't fall asleep, like a lot of the left did during the Obama years, as long as we continue to hold them accountable, then there is very little possibility that they can get away with doing this again. Okay. All right. We are going to go to payday loans real quick. Now, corporate Democrats, for some reason, love the payday loan industry. And they have sided with Republicans to show them that love. Now, if you guys can recall, Debbie Wasserman Schultz got a lot of money from the payday loan industry and also helped to pass rules in Florida in favor of the payday loan industry. So that's just an example, one example of many of Democrats that are actually in love with the payday loan industry. Others are included in this recent bill that was passed that definitely favors that same industry. Now, according to Zach Carter, writing for the Huffington Post, Representatives Gwen Moore, Democrat from Wisconsin, Gregory Meeks, Democrat from New York, Mark Warner from Virginia, and Gary Peters from Michigan have joined Republican Patrick McHenry and Senator Pat Toomey to co-sponsor something called the Protecting Consumers Access to Credit Act. Uh-oh. That sounds Orwellian. Now, according to Carter, the legislation would allow payday lenders to ignore state interest rate caps on consumer loans as long as they partner with a national bank. Now, let me break that down. So basically, payday lenders under this rule would be allowed to set any kind of interest rate on those loans. Now, for people who take out those loans, that means that they end up paying more in interest for those loans. Now, anybody who has to take these payday loans is likely not well off financially. I mean, nobody takes a loan, a payday loan, if they're not in sort of desperate need, right? This is a last resort for people with unexpected bills. Now, if you allow these lenders to raise interest rates, that actually serves to help trap low-income people into having to take more of these loans to pay off their previous loans, and it traps them into a vicious debt cycle. So let me give you some context into this, into what this bill actually does. Now, Carter explains, national banks have a great deal of flexibility with these standards thanks to a court decision made back in the 1970s. Now, they have to comply with the interest rate caps only in their home state, not those of the state where the person receiving a loan lives. So that's important. So what happens is, thanks to this rule, payday loan lenders and other predatory operations can go and ask banks in loosely regulated states. I'm talking places like Delaware, for example, that has very little corporate regulation, to go and issue the loans in their behalf. The payday lender will buy the loan after it's issued from the bank, allowing the bank to earn a commission for its service as a regulatory frontman. In 2015, a federal court had prohibited this end run around state laws in a few states. So they're like, hey, man, look, all you're doing is helping with these debt traps, right? Well, now what Warner's bill does is it says, you know what, let's overturn this decision and actually protect cross-state rent-a-bank schemes. So this is more deregulation, right? And it gets rid of this ruling that actually tried to protect people from having access to these high interest loans, right? And look, I mean high interest. Some banks would charge up to, or some of these lenders would charge up to 400% interest on that loan. That is insane, especially when somebody has to have that money thanks to an emergency. I mean, look, think about this, right? Just over half of Americans have reported not even having $1,000 saved up for an emergency. That's a disaster. You have your car breakdown, well, that's it. I mean, you're barely making it as it is. You're going to need your car to go to work, right? There's a lot of people out there that can hardly afford a $500 car bill. And if they have to take out one of these loans, you've got that 400% interest rate on top of that. That is so easy to fall into debt. I know I have actually taken out these loans before. So I understand how incredibly expensive and how easy it could be to get trapped in a debt cycle. Thank goodness I did not. I had a good job at the time. So there was just an emergency that I had to take care of. I was able to take care of that and, you know, pay off that loan fairly easily. But there are a lot of people, like I said, that don't have that luxury. It is so very easy to fall up into this trap. And so, unfortunately, here come more corporate Democrats, just like the others that also helped Republicans to try to dismantle Dodd-Frank, only helping banks and lenders that end up hurting consumers. Gee, I wonder why Democrats are now also seen as a party of the rich and Wall Street. They are. I mean, the Republicans are too. There's no doubt about that. But look, Democrats love banks. Banks love Democrats. They give them all sorts of legalize bribes and political contributions so that these politicians will vote in favor of them, of these financial institutions. Now, when you do that, you end up having to turn your eye away from any of the struggles of the working class. That's not the kind of party the Democrats should be. But unfortunately, right now, that's the kind of party Democrats are. And the only way to eliminate this, to end this, is to get rid of the influence of corporate money in politics. You've got to get the money out, or you're going to continue to see these Democrats, these corporate Democrats, not only get elected, but then serve the banks and serve their donors. Okay. All right. So now we move on. Let's go to Al Franken. This is a trending story of the day, man. Now, in the wake of all the sexual harassment allegations that have gone forward since the Harvey Weinstein allegations, more and more women have decided to come out to share their story. Now, there's a new report where a TV host and sports broadcaster has accused Senator Al Franken of kissing and groping her without her consent back in 2006. Now, this is Leanne Tweeden, and she had accused Franken, of groping her without her consent while she was asleep and provided a photo for evidence. I will show you that photo now. Yeah, nope. That's disturbing as hell. Now, the incident apparently happened in December 26th when she and Franken, she said, were on a USO tour to, quote, entertain the troops. She said, it wasn't until I was back in the US and looking through the CD of photos we were given by the photographer that I saw this one. I felt violated all over again, embarrassed, belittled, and humiliated. How dare anyone grab my breasts like this and think it's funny? Well, it's not funny. I mean, look, it's damning, okay? You can see that, right? His hands definitely look like they're on her boobs. She's asleep. It's wrong on so many levels. Now, not only that, but the story actually gets worse. Tweeden also wrote that Franken, who was a headliner on the tour, had written some skits and told her he had a part for her, adding that she agreed to play along, well, up until a certain part. When I saw the script, she said, Franken had written a moment where his character comes at me for a kiss. I suspected what he was after, but I figured I could turn my head at the last minute or put my hand over his mouth or to get more laughs from the crowd. On the day of the show, Franken and I were alone backstage going over our lines one last time. He said to me, we need to rehearse the kiss. I laughed and ignored him. Then he said it again. I said something like, relax, Al, this isn't SNL. We don't need to rehearse the kiss. She wrote that Franken continued to insist until she got uncomfortable. Quote, he repeated that actors really need to rehearse everything and that we must practice the kiss. I said, okay, so that he would stop badgering me. We did the line leading up to the kiss, and then he came at me, put his hand on the back of my head, mashed his lips against mine, and aggressively stuck his tongue in my mouth. Ooh. I immediately pushed him away with both of my hands against his chest and told me if he ever did that to me again, I wouldn't be so nice about it the next time. She then said that she felt disgusted and violated. She added that she didn't tell anyone what happened at the time, but she was angry. And look, man, she's got every right to be angry. I mean, that is clearly overstepping your bounds, clearly inappropriate. And worse, look, okay, worse than the picture, right? It's all the behavior of, hey, man, I'm important. I wrote this in here, and you're going to do what I want. I can do what I want. Now, Tweeden also says that I wanted to shout my story to the world with a megaphone to anyone who would listen. But even as angry as I was worried about the potential backlash and damage going public might have on my career as a broadcaster. So that's also infuriating. Okay? So, I mean, that fear of people in power. Like, oh man, this happened to me, but what if I come forward with it and it ruins my career? I'm going to have to shut up if I ever want a job in this town. That's gross and disgusting. Okay? That power dynamic. And we're seeing it in every one of these cases. It's someone that has a certain level of power over someone else. In this case, it's a very well-known comedian, now senator, very well liked by a lot of people. I liked him. Although I was very disappointed at his tenure in the Senate, but never mind that, right? But it's usually someone who's got some sort of recognition and power over someone else. And that's the dynamic that's at play here, okay? And look, she also said, that was then, this is now, I'm no longer afraid. And I think that has a lot to do with the allegations against Harvey Weinstein, the women that brought him down, the women that brought down Mark Halperin. They're going after Brett Ratner, who is another director in Hollywood. There's also the people that took down Bill O'Reilly and Roger Ailes. All these stories, I mean, they started as a trickle, but now they're a flood. Now, Tweeden also issued a direct statement to Franken. She said, Senator Franken, you wrote the script, but there's nothing funny about sexual assault. You knew exactly what you were doing. You forcibly kissed me without my consent, grabbed my breast while I was sleeping, and had someone take a photo of you doing it, knowing I would see later and be ashamed. Now, Al Franken immediately came out with a response saying, I don't remember the incident, but he said, he doesn't remember the incident the same way that she is telling it, but said, yeah, it turns out that photo was not funny. Quote, I certainly don't remember the rehearsal for the skit the same way, but I send my sincerest apologies to Leanne. So, now, he also said, hey, you know what? Please do an ethics investigation on me. So, he's even calling for an ethics investigation on himself. So, there is that. Now, he said also, as to the photo, it was clearly intended to be funny, but wasn't. I shouldn't have done it. So, look, what is it about looking like you're grabbing a sleeping woman's breast? What's funny about that? Maybe I don't understand that kind of humor, right? That's not cute. It's not funny. That is objectification. And worse, it's a violation of her personal space without consent. And see, this is the problem. People in power, they will abuse that power if they think they can get away with it. Or some people might not even realize that what they're doing is wrong. Oh, it's a joke. Ha ha. I grabbed her boobs while she was asleep and I had somebody take a picture. Ha ha. Not funny. And there's no excuse to that behavior. And look, Al Franken, just like Roy Moore, who, by the way, I'm not trying to equivocate them, right? What Moore did on more than one occasion was not only terrible, but also, in many respects, illegal. Okay? Now, they will both have their defenders that are based on political affiliation. And that's what also bothers me about this. So let me give something straight here. Now, if you're defending Al Franken because he's a good liberal and a nice guy, well, you're part of the problem. If you're defending Roy Moore because he's a good conservative, you are also part of the problem. If you are using one to distract from the other, then you are also part of the problem. You are doing nothing but using this as a political football. This is not a partisan issue. This is an issue of people in power abusing that power to end up getting what they want. This is not political until people started making it political. I don't care who you are or what political team that you play for. This behavior is unacceptable. And we have got to keep cracking down on it. Okay. I got one more story here, so we're going to go over time. Speaking of sexual assault, here we go. Now, two more women have now come out with allegations against Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore. Now, one of the women, Gina Richardson, says that she was in high school working in the men's department at Sears at the local mall when she had been approached by Roy Moore. So this was, of course, posted in the Washington Post. And these women explain their relationship and their interactions with Roy Moore. This, of course, happened back in the 70s, right? Now, she recalls that she had been approached by Moore just before or after her 18th birthday, she's not quite sure, as more than a 30-year-old local attorney was gaining a reputation for pursuing young women at the mall in Gadsden, Alabama. Now, his overtures had apparently caused one store manager to tell new hires to, quote, watch out for this guy, another young woman to complain to her supervisor, and Richardson to eventually hide from him when he came into Sears, the women say. So, now Richardson says Moore, now a candidate for U.S. Senate, asked her where she went to school and then for her phone number. Now, she had declined that and said, oh, you know, my dad, he'd never approve of that. So Daddy says, no, he's very, very strict, right? I can't give you my phone number. Now, obviously, she didn't want to give him his phone number in the first place. And it's one of those things where, can't do it. My dad would never approve. Even though, of course, she didn't want to be approached by Moore, and she didn't know how to do it, right? She didn't know how to get him to go away, because he wouldn't go away on his own, right? Nothing that she would say that would actually make him stop harassing her, okay? Now, to give you an example of how far this guy went, a few days later, she said she was in trigonometry class at Gadsden High. Again, she was a high school student, when she was summoned to the principal's office over the intercom in her classroom. And of course, when she got there, she realized she had a phone call. Now, she answered the phone, said, I said hello, and the male on the other line said, Gina, this is Roy Moore. I was like, what? He said, what are you doing? I'm in trig class. What do you expect? I'm in school. Why are you calling me at school? That's not what she said, but that would be my question. Like, I'm in school. What the hell are you doing? Why are you calling me? Well, apparently there was a reason that he called, and it was to ask her out on a date. A few days later, after he asked her out at Sears, again, after that call, because she had, again, said no, she finally relented and agreed, feeling both nervous and flattered. According to the report, they met that night at a movie theater at the mall. After she got off work, a date that ended with Moore driving her to her car in a dark parking lot behind Sears and giving her what she called an unwanted forceful kiss that left her scared. Quote, after that, I never wanted to see him again, says Richardson, who is now 58 and a community college teacher living in Birmingham. Richardson, whose account was corroborated by classmate and Sears coworker Kayla McLaughlin, is among 4 women who say Moore pursued them when they were teenagers or young women working at the mall. Richardson and Becky Gray, the woman who complained to her manager, have not previously spoken publicly. Now, there's another woman, Phyllis Smith. Now, Phyllis Smith was also working at a store in the mall. Now, this was Brooks, and it was a clothing store geared toward young women. Now, apparently, Roy Moore loved to go into that store, even though it was geared towards young women. When he was there, not for the clothes, he was there for the girls. And he was in there so much and bothered them so much that Smith had said the teenage girls would counsel each other to make yourself scarce when Roy shows up. He's just here to bother you. Don't pay attention to him, and he'll eventually go away. Jeez. Now, all in all, the Post spoke to about a dozen people who worked at the mall or were there as teenagers during the late 70s and early 80s, and recall Moore as a frequent presence. A well-dressed man walking around alone, leaning on counters, spending enough time in the stores, especially on weekend nights, that some of the young women who worked there said that they had become very uncomfortable. Many of these people talk about his continued presence at that mall during that point of time. He said Becky Gray, who was 22 and working in the men's department of a store called Pizzitz, said, quote, "It would always be on a Friday or Saturday night. Parents would drop kids off, let them roam the mall. Well, then he started coming up to me. She says Moore kept asking her out, and she, of course, would refuse. I'd always say, no, I'm dating someone. No, I'm in a relationship. And again, he wouldn't quit." Gray says that he was persistent in a way that made her uncomfortable. She says he lingered in her section or else by the bathroom area, and that she became so disturbed that she complained to the Bizets manager, Maynard von Spiegelfield. Gray says he told her that it was not the first time he had a complaint about him hanging at the mall. Smith, a one-time Brooks employee, said that she was probably 19 when Moore began coming into the store, which she says employed many teenage girls. She remembers him being alone and had the strong impression he was not looking to shop. Smith, who lives in Gadsden, and who is a Democrat, not that that actually matters, said, quote, "I can remember him walking in and the whole mood would change with us girls. It would be like we were on guard. I would find something else to do. I remember being creeped out." Smith said Moore never approached her personally, but she saw him chatting with other young clerks and that she would tell new hires to watch out for this guy. She says that occasionally one of the store managers would have to deal with bounced checks, which meant going to the DA's office where Moore worked. She said the managers would draw straws to decide who had to go talk to him about the cases. She said it was just, quote, "sort of a dreadful experience." Well, sounds like it. And, of course, I can see why. Now back to Richardson, who again did go out a date with Moore. She explained in detail what that date was like. She said she met Moore at the movie theater. She said she can't remember what they saw, but only what happened after. She says it was cold and Moore offered to drive her to her car, which was more than a football field's distance away in a parking area behind Sears. She says he parked by her car and began chatting with her. And again, she says, "Hey, look, my dad, very, very strict. That's why I can't go out with you. I just explained to him that my dad's a minister, and I just can't sneak around because that's wrong. So I thanked him and started to get out, and he grabbed me in, pulled me in, and that's when he kissed me. It was a man kiss. A really deep tongue, like very forceful tongue. It was a surprise. I'd never been kissed like that. And the minute that happened, I got scared then. I really did. Something came over me that scared me. And so I said, I've got to go. My curfew is now." This guy's 30 years old, and he's dating girls with curfew who are still in high school. That's gross. She says that after that happened, she got out of the car and ran to her own. Now, Richardson and McLaughlin, who again corroborates this, said they talked about it afterwards, and when Moore came back into Sears, McLaughlin would warn her friends so she can hide in the back of the store. "I would call and say he's coming this way." McLaughlin says she would go to the back. She was that uncomfortable. Richardson then says, "All these years, I thought that it was just an isolated incident." And this is talking about why she came forward. "Now as a mother and a grandmother, it just makes me physically sick. I realized that it didn't just happen to me. No, it was part of a pattern. He had done this to plenty of different teenage girls. This is the creepy guy that went into the mall and tried to hit on teen girls. Tried to get them to go out with him, would pressure them relentlessly, would go into their places of work, and try to get them to go out on dates. And then when he did get a date, which was very, very reluctant, he would end up putting moves on these girls, which were sexual assault. There was no consent. These were definitely unwanted. So, I mean, this is a clear case. None of these girls wanted that. But that's who Roy Moore is, man. He's a creep. He's always been a creep. And there's nothing there that can really explain that away. That's who Roy Moore is. I mean, Alabama, you can't let this guy be the next senator. You can't let him get away with it. Now that it's all out into the open, now that everybody knows, he cannot be rewarded by being given a Senate seat. If we do, if Alabama vote for this guy, I mean, then I don't know what to do. He's got to go. Okay. All right. That's it. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Make sure to give us a like and a share if you enjoyed the show. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. We're here usually Monday through Friday, every 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern. We've got videos that go up daily onto our channel. Excuse me. Sorry. So you can go ahead and check that out. So, all right. Thank you guys. Love you. See you guys tomorrow. And remember, change begins with you. Good night to you, IT Nation.